Good day, guys. Here in my second hour, we are going to be doing the United States history. It's a brief history of the U.S. Some of this we've already covered, but I think this is a nice condensed version that I'm going to be using for now. Something we'll pick back up with come fall. All right. So here we go. Second hour. We are starting in, and you're going to have copies of this in your stuff. All right. And what I'd like you to do, I actually have a few words that I want you to go ahead and use as your vocabulary words that'll give you a better understanding for some of these sections. And it's important that you go ahead and do this and understand where these are being used throughout the chapter here. So we have Boston Massacre, colonies, colonists, debt, Declaration of Independence, Native Americans, New World, Redcoats, religious freedom. That'll also be named off on the video, on your worksheet that should have come with this. If you don't have the worksheet, I will figure out how we can get it to you, because there was some confusion with what I was doing with some of your worksheets and your packets. So I apologize if you don't have it, but at least you know now. The first European explorers came to North America while looking for a shorter route to India. When they arrived, they found that there were already many people living here. The people were Native Americans. They had been living on the land for a long time. There were hundreds of Native American nations, and each nation had its own name, culture, and language. The European explorers did not call these people Native Americans. They knew that the people of India were darker skinned than most Europeans. When they saw the darker skinned Native Americans, they thought that they had arrived in India, so they called them Indians. After the explorers, other Europeans came. They were mainly from three countries, England, France, and Spain. By then, everyone knew that they had not reached India. They called this new place the New World. The people who came to settle in the New World were called colonists. Colonists are people who make their homes in a new land but remain citizens of their native country. The new settlers often threatened the Native Americans' straight way of life. Sometimes relations between the groups were peaceful, but as more settlers came, there were more conflicts or fights. The Native American nations fought for what they thought were their lands, but the settlers believed that the lands were now theirs. These conflicts were called the Indian Wars. They lasted off and on for 100 years. There were about 1 million Native Americans in North America when the Europeans first arrived. By the time the wars ended, there were only about 200,000. But the wars did not cause most of the deaths. Native Americans had no immunity to European diseases. Immunity is the power to resist a disease. The native people of the Americas were killed in large numbers by diseases such as measles, chickenpox, smallpox, and influenza. The people who made the difficult voyage to the New World had many reasons for doing so. Some came for the adventure of settling a new land. Many expected to find riches here. Other settlers came to find a better way of life for themselves and their families. In Europe, farmers had to pay high rents or taxes. In the New World, seemed to be endless lands for farming, and the settlers considered this land to be free. They did not pay the Native Americans for the land. This free land attracted more and more people to the New World. With high hopes, they came to settle the land and develop farming communities. Another important reason for coming to the New World was religion. In Europe, some people had been treated cruelly because of their religious beliefs. They came to the New World looking for religious freedom. For example, the Puritans, a Protestant group, left England and settled in Massachusetts. Also, an Englishman named Lord Baltimore founded the colony of Maryland as a place of religious freedom for Catholics. Many people feel that the European settlers robbed the Native Americans of their land. The Native Americans had already been living in the region for many years before the Europeans discovered it. But as soon as the European explorers found the land, they considered it to be their own. Do you think this was fair? How would you have felt if you were a Native American who was suddenly forced to live under foreign rule? Write your answer on a separate sheet of paper. So, those are food for thought. I would like you to really think about it, okay? So, then there's a practice one, the first Americans. Decide if each statement below is true or false with the correct letter on the line of each statement. Reading back and reviewing this, you'll be able to go ahead and decipher which one is true, which one is false. All right? England's control. England was mostly interested in settling up colonies along the east coast of North America, the land closest to the Atlantic Ocean. In the time, there were 13 colonies along the east coast. Colonies are regions called by the distant countries. The 13 colonies were, and remember we've done lots of worksheets on this, you guys labeled it as southern colonies, middle colonies, and also the New England colonies. So you'll have all of that information stored up here in your brain, okay? The people in the 13 colonies had come from England, Germany, Switzerland, and other European countries. However, by 1765, they were all under English control. King George III was the ruler. He and the English Parliament or legislature kept tight control over the colonies. They wanted to stay in charge of the colonies' dealings with other countries, and the English declared that they could control the colonies' foreign policy and trade. This meant that England would be in charge of all business between the colonies and other countries. The English Parliament also began to tax the colonists. This meant that the colonists had to pay England certain fees to live on and use the land. England's strict control of foreign trade and policy began to anger the colonists more and more. The population of the New World was increasingly. There were more farming and more trading, and as they gained resources, the colonists began to trade directly with foreign countries. The colonists also wanted more rights. They were tired of being treated like second-class citizens. Also, the colonists did not think it was fair that they had to pay taxes to England since they could not vote for its government. Besides, England was far away. How could it rule them anyway? There was no one in England to speak for the colonists. But some colonists began to speak up for themselves. They declared no taxation without representation. You should recognize that. This meant that the colonists refused to pay taxes if they could not elect anyone to represent them in England. Sometimes the colonists did more than just speak out. There were acts of violence as colonists expressed their opposition to England's rule. Finally, war broke out. It was a revolution, a fight to overthrow a government. To stand up to England, the colonies formed an army. George Washington was appointed commander-in-chief or head of the army. There will be a second part to this. So listen up, guys.